The Persona franchise has broken free from Sony countless times in the past, but even so, there's still a lot of naysayers out there who insist it's never gonna come to Nintendo consoles. You know, even though it already friggin' did. With Personas 3, 4, and 5 being confirmed for the Xbox, you'd think that everyone would just accept that the mainline games are inevitably gonna come to the Switch sooner rather than later, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of people out there who take the non-announcement as confirmation that this is never gonna happen, all while PlayStation gatekeepers are ha-haing all the way to the bank. But if you ask me for the millionth time, I still think that the mainline Persona games are coming to the Switch, so sit back in your Step Pepper's lawn chair and allow me, YouTube's favorite full-grown man, Cameron, to tell you why there's literally nothing that's gonna stop this from happening.
Cameron, all one word. Cameron, danger. Oh no, it never fails. He'll take the clues and find the where's and why's and who's. Cameron, all one word. Cameron, danger. Cameron.
Okay, so I really didn't want to talk about this again, seeing as I kinda already covered this topic like 83 times in the past, but even days after Personas 3, 4, and 5 were confirmed for the Xbox, I still see people talking about whether or not they're coming to the Switch, and the main confusion seems to stem from the fact that it was only confirmed for the Xbox, with 3 and 4 being clarified for the PS5 shortly after. Like, these games were revealed during an Xbox presentation, so why on earth would the Switch have been mentioned? Kinda reminds me of E3 2018 when Sony happened to be the ones who showed the Resident Evil 2 remake trailer off, and then everybody was like, oh my god, did you see that? Sony killed Microsoft this year. But like, the game was for both consoles, so why did Sony get all the credit? Just because it didn't shout Xbox out at the end? Well, that's kinda what we're looking at with Xbox Persona reveal here. It's only a matter of time that these mainline games would go multiplat eventually, but if Nintendo's not gonna have a direct or anything like that, then it kinda makes sense that Atlus would let Microsoft be the ones to spill the beans first. I mean, sure, Atlus is a little more buddy-buddy with Nintendo than Microsoft, and that's where most of the Persona demand seems to be, but there's no real reason why Microsoft should have waited for the above-average-sized end to get the big reveal when they had a big presentation and needed some news. And if you got 3 mainline Persona games coming to your platform, then why would you want to overshadow your own announcement by confirming they're going to be on somebody else's platform too? Especially when you don't even have any Banjo-Kazooie game for the 14th straight year in a row. I get that since the Switch is the console that most people were clamoring to see mainline Persona games on, that the frustration really comes from feeling like Atlus wasn't listening to their fans. But honestly, I think Nintendo's to blame for the lack of a confirmation here.
Wow, I didn't even do anything!
I mean, there's a reason why they don't do nearly as many directs as they used to, and that's because they pretty much have to hit a home run every time with games that they know are coming out in the near future. Otherwise, people have been known to freak out a little too hard, even so much so that the market value drops by $1 billion sometimes. So, yeah, I don't blame Nintendo for wanting to announce the confirmation of mainline Persona games coming to the Switch for one of their directs, since they know it'd be a really big deal for a lot of people, and since Personas 3 and 4 aren't expected to come to the Xbox till 2023, I wouldn't even hold my breath that they're going to be confirmed in the very next direct. However, one game that certainly does have a release date for the Xbox is Persona 5 Royal, though, and if it's coming to the Switch, then it would make sense for Nintendo to announce it sooner than later, seeing as how the rule seems to be to announce games that are coming out within the next 6 months to avoid more botches like Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime 4 being announced way too early. And at the time of this recording, we still don't have a direct just yet, but there's certainly going to be one soon, so surely Persona 5 Royal is going to be on there if it's coming out in October, right? Well, I certainly hope so, and definitely think that it's possible, but it really just depends on whether or not Atlus feels like putting a little bit of work into porting a PS4 game over to the Switch. Don't get me wrong, Persona 5 Royal can absolutely run on the Switch. I mean, after all, the original Persona 5 was on the PS3, and at the risk of pissing like 5 or 6 people off, Royal doesn't really look all that much better than the original as far as visuals are concerned. I mean, it looks great, but more so for the style than the processing power. In fact, it actually looks pretty much the same as Persona 5 Strikers. I mean, that game ended up on the Switch. I know that they run on entirely different engines, so it's not a matter of copy and pasting. I'm just saying that the Switch can definitely display Persona 5 Royal. Hell, the Switch runs Shin Megami Tensei 5 just fine, and I dare say that it looks pretty damn good. I mean, I'm sure it'd look better on the PS5, or even the 4 for that matter, and it'd damn sure run a little better too, but I'd bet that if the game came out on another console and somebody suggested bringing it over to the Switch, you'd hear people say, yeah, right, like the Switch could ever run this game. Aside from noticeable long-distance frame rate issues, the game runs just fine on the Switch, just like Persona 5 Strikers, and even 13 Sentinels for that matter, so I think Persona 5 Royal definitely could run on the Switch, so the real question is, will Atlus do it? Well, I still think so, but since it might actually require a little bit of extra work as opposed to the Xbox versions, it is possible that Atlus just might wait until Nintendo's got new hardware so it's a little bit stronger just to save themselves the effort. Although I'd be stunned if it got a physical considering how expensive cartridges are for games that are 30 gigabytes. Persona 5 doesn't end up coming on a Nintendo Switch though then. The only reason will be is because Atlas just didn't feel like putting the effort into cutting corners to get the game on there, as opposed to there being some kind of a mythical Sony barrier preventing the game from happening or anything like that. I mean, these days, it just doesn't make sense for third-party games to be exclusive to one console anymore, and for Persona in particular, it simply never really made sense for the mainline games to expand beyond PlayStation until really recently. Now that they're not only on Steam, but also the Xbox, there's just no way that we're not going to see them on Nintendo's consoles, especially now that Shin Megami Tensei 5's already had its time to shine. Smash Ultimate's got content for Personas 3, 4, and 5, the 3DS had an exclusive sequel to 3 and 4, as well as one for 3, 4, and 5 together, the Switch has got sequels to Personas 4 and 5, and the mythical Sony barrier has been proven to be non-existent, among other things on top of all of that. So given that Personas 3 and 4 are basically copy and pastable to the Switch, it's pretty much a guarantee that those games are on the way. Now the off chance that Atlas doesn't feel like doing a little bit extra work to make a ton of money on bringing Persona 5 Royal over to the Switch right now, then they certainly will as soon as Nintendo gets new hardware, mark my ass. These things just take time, I suppose, and it wasn't really until the Switch started taking off that anybody really wanted Persona games on Nintendo consoles to begin with, so even though it's still gonna take a little bit longer, I'm gonna quadruple down on Persona games coming to the Nintendo Switch, hopefully for the last time. Even though I will buy all these games on the Switch, I certainly don't need them, seeing as I already own them all and have beaten them multiple times, so I always think it's a little bit weird when people tell me I'm never gonna get to play them just because I think they're coming to Nintendo consoles. Like, I don't need these games on the Switch, but I still want them on there because I love them so much that I want them to reach a new audience. Not just because I'm a swell guy who wants to spread the love for something I care about, but mainly because I want these games to make more money so that Atlas will have the incentive to put more into future games, which will then lead to me enjoying them more.
Anyway, that's all for today, though, but if you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling and disturbing imagery, though, then you should check out my wacky adventures of the Persona Q games, where Atlas literally told me to destroy a cartridge through an email. If you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go drop my dad off at t-ball practice. And, also, I've been working a lot more lately because I broke my streaming computer, and I'm kinda trying to save up for a new one, so bear with me on new videos for a little bit, would ya? Later!